Waitress fired for stealing leftover food to take home for her sick brother, the next day.
Hello everyone, enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
Clara, table 8 has been waiting for their order for over 15 minutes. Are you planning to let the customers walk out? Yes, I'm bringing it out right now, Clara replied. Edward, a middle-aged man with silver-rimmed glasses, never missed an opportunity to criticize the staff. He ran the restaurant with an iron fist, creating an oppressive atmosphere that made everyone hold their breath whenever he entered the kitchen. Clara was no exception. Despite being under constant pressure, Clara never dared to complain. Because aside from this job, she had no other means to support Michael, her young brother suffering from a chronic illness. Michael had to stay home all day, his body frail and thin, relying on the nutritious meals Clara brought back to maintain his health. "You're back!" Michael would often exclaim with joy whenever Clara walked through the door with a small bag of food, his eyes lighting up like he'd found a ray of hope in the darkness. But to make that happen, Clara had to discreetly ask for or take leftover food from the restaurant, something she knew violated Edward's strict rules. "Clara, this salmon can't be served anymore, throw it out," whispered Mary, the middle-aged chef with neatly tied-back hair. "Miss Mary, can I take it home?" Clara hesitantly asked. "Be quick before Edward sees," Mary nodded. She always felt sorry for Clara's situation, though there wasn't much more she could do to help. The bright restaurant wasted food every day, but for Clara, those leftovers were treasures that could sustain her brother. Each time she took food, she acted as cautiously as a thief, her heart pounding, afraid Edward or another coworker would catch her. In her mind, a voice of self-reproach echoed, "Am I doing the right thing or the wrong thing?" But then the image of Michael, his deep eyes and weak smile, gave her no choice but to continue. "Sister Clara, what delicious food do you have this time?" Michael would often ask eagerly when Clara arrived home. "I have salmon and toast. Do you like that?" "Yes, I love it," he would reply, his small, trembling hands reaching out to take the food container from his sister. The lives of Clara and Michael were confined to their tiny, run-down house in the suburbs, far from the glamorous world of the Star restaurant. Every morning, Clara left home with an old alarm clock in her bag, praying she could somehow earn enough to take Michael to a better doctor. But those hopes seemed more distant every day, like the light at the end of a tunnel she could never reach. Their small house was always silent, except for Michael's coughing at night. Clara often sat by his bedside, holding his cold hand and whispering, "Michael, I'll do whatever it takes to make you better. I promise." But Michael only smiled, a weak yet hopeful smile, "I know you will." That harsh life had pushed Clara to the brink, but it never broke her. Each day, she got up early, went to the restaurant, endured Edward's scolding and demanding customers, all for Michael's chance at survival. At the Star, no one cared about her story. All they saw was a young woman rushing around with trays of food, bowing her head apologetically whenever she was criticized, never complaining or arguing. Mary, the only co-worker who understood Clara, occasionally tried to help by sneaking her some bread or leftover meat. But even Mary couldn't shield her from Edward's relentless scrutiny. "Clara, you can't keep going like this," Mary once said during a break. "But Miss Mary, I don't have another choice. Michael needs me," Clara replied, her voice trembling. Mary sighed. She knew Clara was sacrificing everything for her brother, but she also knew Edward would never forgive her if he found out. Those tense days dragged on, leaving weary lines on Clara's face and invisible scars in her heart. She didn't know that a fateful night was approaching, one that would change everything forever. The sound of the front door bell rang, signaling a new customer had entered the restaurant. Clara quickly wiped her hands, adjusted her apron, and grabbed a menu, heading toward the new table. She tried to keep a smile on her face, hiding her exhaustion behind a cheerful demeanor and professional attitude. "Good evening, sir and madam. Here's the menu. I'll be back in a few minutes to take your order," she said, her voice gentle yet professional. After completing her task, Clara returned to the kitchen. The heat from boiling pots filled the air, the aroma of food wafting through the space, but all she felt was anxiety. Edward stood in the corner of the kitchen, arms crossed, his hawk-like eyes scrutinizing every employee. Clara tried to ignore him, but the fear made her steps falter. "Clara, why isn't the soup for table 12 out yet?" Edward suddenly bellowed, startling everyone. "I'm bringing it out right now," Clara murmured, hastily picking up the soup tray and rushing out of the kitchen. In her heart, she prayed Edward wouldn't notice her again for the rest of the night. But fate seemed to have other plans. As her shift neared its end, Clara hurriedly gathered the leftover food Mary had secretly set aside for her in the kitchen corner. She packed them into a small paper bag, intending to bring them home for Michael. "Clara, what are you doing?" Edward's cold voice rang out behind her. Startled, she turned around, clutching the bag tightly. This is leftover food that the customers didn't finish." "I thought." "You thought what?" "This is the restaurant's property, not yours." Edward interrupted, his eyes flashing with anger. "But it's just food that would be thrown away. I just wanted to bring it home for my brother. He's very sick," Clara tried to explain, her voice choked with emotion. Silence. "Do you think this restaurant is a charity? Leftover food must be disposed of properly, not taken home by you." Edward shouted, his voice drawing the attention of everyone in the kitchen. "I'm sorry, Edward, I really didn't mean to do anything wrong. I just—" "No excuses. You're a thief, and I won't tolerate thieves in this restaurant." Edward cut her off, his tone dripping with contempt. His words were like a dagger stabbing into Clara's pride. She tried to hold back her tears, but they rolled down her cheeks anyway. "Edward, please. I need this job. I haven't done anything wrong, I just want to help my brother," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I don't want to hear any more excuses. You're fired immediately. Pack up your things and get out of here before I call security," Edward declared coldly, leaving no room for compromise. The other employees remained silent, their faces showing disapproval but none daring to speak up. In the tense atmosphere, Mary stepped forward, her eyes blazing with anger. "Edward, don't you think you're being unreasonable? Clara is not a bad person. She works harder than anyone here." Mary said, her voice full of indignation. "Mary, if you don't want to be fired like Clara, stay out of it. This is none of your business," Edward snapped, turning to the rest of the staff. "Anyone who sides with her can hand in their resignation too." The kitchen fell into silence, broken only by the heavy sound of Clara's footsteps as she left. Her heart felt shattered. The tears streaming down her face weren't just from humiliation but from the fear of what would happen to Michael. She knew that losing this job would plunge them into desperate circumstances. As she stepped out of the restaurant, the cold Los Angeles night air stung her skin like salt on a wound. Clara looked up at the dark sky, her heart filled with despair. Back in the kitchen, the oppressive silence lingered. Mary stood still, her eyes following Clara's small figure until it disappeared through the door. A wave of frustration and anger welled up inside her. Edward, with his cold expression and arrogant demeanor, continued adjusting his apron, seemingly indifferent to what had just happened. "This is unbelievable, Edward," Mary said, her voice shaking with anger. "Mary, what do you want to say?" Edward turned to her, squinting. "You know how much Clara needs this job. Her brother is gravely ill, and she didn't do anything wrong. She just took a few scraps of food we were going to throw away. That's not stealing. Rules are rules, Mary. I won't allow anyone to break them. If you have a problem with that, you're welcome to leave too," Edward replied, his tone as sharp as a blade. Mary shook her head, clenching her fists to contain her rage. She knew that confronting Edward further would only worsen the situation, but the image of Clara leaving in tears haunted her mind. After everything quieted down, Mary gathered the remaining staff in the kitchen. Do you all think that was fair? Clara worked harder than anyone here. She never complained, never caused trouble, and this is how she's treated. Some of her colleagues avoided her gaze, their heads bowed in silence. However, Henry, a young kitchen assistant, muttered, "Mary, we all know Clara didn't deserve that, but Edward. He has all the power. What can we do?" "Doing nothing means we're complicit in this injustice," Mary said firmly. "Clara isn't the only one Edward has treated like this. We have to speak up, at least to defend her dignity." "Mary, what are you planning to do?" Henry asked, his face filled with concern. "I'll tell Clara's story to someone who can make a difference," Mary replied, her eyes shining with determination. That night, Mary reached out to Alex, one of the restaurant's longtime regulars. He was a wealthy, distinguished man respected by everyone. Alex often visited the Star, not just for the food but also for the attentive service provided by employees like Clara. Mary knew Alex was someone with influence and compassion, and she hoped he would listen. "Mr. Alex, I need to talk to you," Mary said, approaching him at the restaurant's bar after he had finished his dinner. "Mary, is something wrong?" "You seem troubled," Alex asked, setting down his glass of wine. "It's about a young employee named Clara. I believe you've met her before. She's hardworking and dedicated, but today she was unfairly fired by Edward," Mary began, her voice heavy with emotion. Alex tilted his head, his sharp eyes narrowing. "Fired? For what reason?" "Edward caught Clara taking leftover food home for her brother. The boy is gravely ill, and she only wanted to help him survive. The food was going to be thrown away, but Edward called her a thief and dismissed her on the spot, refusing to listen to any explanation," Mary explained, her eyes filled with indignation. Alex was silent for a moment, as though deep in thought. "You said Clara was taking food home for her brother? What kind of sister is she?" "She's a responsible, loving sister," Mary replied, her voice softening at the mention of Michael. "I've never seen anyone sacrifice as much as Clara does. Despite how hard this job is, she's never complained. Everything she does is for her little brother, Michael." Alex nodded slightly, his gaze thoughtful. "Mary, do you know where Clara lives? I want to learn more about her situation." Mary hesitated for a moment but eventually gave Clara's address. "I believe if anyone can help her, it's you, Alex." Alex offered a faint smile, placing a hand on Mary's shoulder. "Thank you, Mary. I can't promise anything, but I'll do my best to understand her situation and, if possible, help her through this." As Alex departed, Mary felt a small sense of relief. She knew Alex was a man of integrity, and if he decided to take action, Clara might have a chance to change her circumstances. Back in the kitchen, Mary looked around at her colleagues, whose eyes still showed frustration but also traces of fear. She approached Henry and spoke softly. "We may not be able to do much, but I won't stand by and watch injustice happen. Clara deserves help, and I trust Alex to do something about it." Henry nodded slightly. "I hope he can help Clara and Michael. As for Edward, I just hope he gets what he deserves." The next morning, under the soft light of dawn, Alex stood by the large window of his luxurious apartment, a cup of coffee in hand. Thoughts of what Mary had told him the previous night swirled in his mind. The image of a young woman, working tirelessly and sacrificing everything for her brother while facing injustice, left him unable to remain indifferent. Alex turned to his desk, where he kept a list of restaurants and employees he frequently interacted with. Clara's name, mentioned by Mary, surfaced in his memory. He remembered her, a quick, attentive waitress who never let her fatigue or struggles show. "Anthony!" Alex called out loudly, and his longtime assistant promptly entered the room. "Yes, sir. What do you need?" Anthony asked, holding a small notebook to take notes. "I need you to find this address," Alex said, sliding a piece of paper with Clara's address toward Anthony. "And get the car ready. I want to go there today." Anthony nodded without hesitation, understanding the gravity in Alex's tone. When Alex spoke with such seriousness, Anthony knew the matter was important. Less than an hour later, Alex was seated in his luxurious car, with Anthony driving toward the outskirts of the city. The streets grew narrower and quieter as they left the bustling urban center behind. The scenery shifted from towering buildings to small, worn-down houses with peeling paint and balconies draped with drying laundry. "This is the address, sir," Anthony said, pointing to a small house at the end of an alleyway. Alex looked at the house, feeling a pang of sorrow. The small home, with its chipped paint, old wooden windows, and a tiny overgrown garden, was a world away from the opulence he was accustomed to. Clara had just placed a small bag of medicine on the table when she heard a knock at the door. She quickly wiped her hands on her apron and went to open it. When the door swung open, the sight of Alex left her so surprised she froze in place. "Hello, Clara. I'm Alex. May I come in and speak with you for a moment?" Clara hesitated briefly, but Alex's polite demeanor and warm voice made her feel he could be trusted. "Of course, please come in," Clara said, stepping aside to let Alex enter the small house. Inside, Alex took in his surroundings. The house was small but meticulously tidy. Every corner reflected care, despite the old and simple furnishings. Michael, a boy of about 12, lay on a worn sofa with a thin blanket draped over him. "This is Michael, your brother?" Alex asked gently. "Yes, sir." "Michael, say hello," Clara said softly. Michael, though visibly weak, managed a small smile and nodded. "Hello, sir." Alex knelt slightly, offering a kind smile. "Hello, Michael. You look like a strong young man. Your sister has told me many wonderful things about you." Michael blushed slightly, glancing at Clara. She gently ruffled his hair as if to reassure him. Once Michael had drifted back to sleep on the sofa, Alex and Clara sat at the small table in the corner of the kitchen. Alex spoke with compassion in his voice. "Mary told me about what happened at the restaurant. Clara, I'm truly sorry for how they treated you." Clara lowered her gaze, her fingers gripping the edge of her skirt. "I don't blame anyone, sir. Maybe it was my fault for breaking the rules." "No, you didn't do anything wrong," Alex said firmly. "You were just trying to care for your family. That is never wrong." Clara looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. For the first time in days, she heard words of kindness. "My life with Michael isn't easy, sir. But I have no other choice. I have to work. I have to take care of him. He's everything to me." Alex nodded, empathy evident on his face. "I understand. And I want to help you, if you'll let me." Clara was momentarily stunned. "Help me? But I don't want to bother anyone." "This isn't a bother," Alex said, his voice sincere. "This is about doing what's right. You're a hard-working person who deserves help when you need it." Alex left the small house as the sun began to set. On the drive back, he couldn't stop thinking about Clara and Michael's life. The image of the frail boy with bright eyes and a gentle smile weighed heavily on his heart. "Anthony," Alex said, breaking the silence. "Yes, sir. We need to do something for them. I can't let this go on." Anthony nodded, familiar with his employer's compassionate nature. "I'll follow your instructions, sir." The following afternoon, Alex returned to the small house in the outskirts where Clara and Michael lived. His car rolled slowly over the uneven road, flanked by old, weathered houses with peeling paint. Anthony, his assistant, carefully parked the car in front of the house, and Alex stepped out, carrying a large paper bag. Clara was sitting on a small chair on the porch, mending a torn shirt for Michael. Seeing Alex, she quickly stood up, surprise etched across her face. "Mr. Alex, why are you here today? Clara asked, her voice tinged with worry. I came to visit you and Michael. I brought some food and medicine. I hope I'm not intruding, Alex said, a warm smile on his face. You're very kind, but, Clara hesitated, her gaze dropping. I don't know what to say. You didn't have to do this. This isn't about obligation, it's because I want to help, Alex replied sincerely. Shall we go inside? I'd like to learn more about Michael. Clara nodded and invited him in. As they entered, Alex placed the paper bag on the table. The aroma of fresh bread, cheese, and fruit filled the small room. Michael, lying on the old sofa, weakly turned his head to look. Hello, young man, Alex said, stepping closer. How are you feeling today? Michael smiled faintly and replied in a weak voice, I'm feeling better. Thank you for coming. Do you know your sister told me that you're a very strong boy? I'm quite impressed, Alex said, sitting in a chair beside the sofa. Clara watched the scene, her heart swelling with emotion. She had never seen Michael so comfortable speaking with a stranger. After some time, Alex turned to Clara and asked if they could talk privately. The two sat at the small table in the kitchen, where the evening sunlight streamed through the thin curtains. Clara, could you tell me more about Michael? What exactly is his condition? Alex asked, his eyes full of concern. Clara sighed softly. Michael has a congenital immune deficiency. His body can't fight off illnesses that most people consider minor. Even a simple cold can be life-threatening for him. Alex nodded, listening intently. He was diagnosed as a baby, but the treatment is very expensive. I've tried to do everything I can to earn money for his medicine and nutritious food. But now that I've lost my job at the restaurant, I honestly don't know what to do, Clara said, her voice trembling. Have you ever considered seeking help from others? Maybe a charity or an organization? Alex suggested. Clara shook her head, her eyes glistening with tears. I don't want to be a burden to anyone. I've always handled things on my own. Alex smiled gently. Clara, accepting help isn't a sign of weakness. Sometimes, it's the best way to care for the ones we love. None of us can do everything alone. As night fell, Clara prepared a simple meal using the food Alex had brought. She carefully portioned it out for Michael, speaking cheerfully to encourage him. Alex sat at the table, observing the siblings. The scene moved him deeply. In the small, modest home, despite their material hardships, the love between Clara and Michael was palpable, filling every corner. Thank you so much for today, Clara said as she walked Alex to the door. My brother was very happy to meet you. Don't thank me, Clara. I'm just doing what's necessary. And I'll be back. Please think of me as a friend, Alex said, his eyes sincere. On the drive back, Alex sat quietly in the car, his mind racing with thoughts. Anthony, noticing his employer's pensive mood, cautiously asked, Sir, are you thinking about how to help them? Alex nodded slightly. Anthony, Clara and Michael need support. That boy cannot continue living in these conditions. I can't let them face this alone. What do you plan to do, sir? Anthony asked, his tone serious. I don't have a concrete plan yet, but I want to start by learning more about treatment options for Michael. Perhaps we can reach out to a doctor or a major hospital, Alex replied. Anthony nodded. I'll assist you in finding the information. That night, Alex couldn't sleep. Clara's story echoed in his mind. The image of Michael lying on the worn-out sofa with his faint smile weighed heavily on his heart. He knew this wasn't just about responsibility or compassion, it was something he had to do. The late-night quiet of Los Angeles was unusually serene, with only the gentle breeze whispering through empty streets. In Alex's expansive study, the light from a desk lamp illuminated walls lined with books and art. Alex sat at his desk, his eyes fixed on the empty space in front of him. On the table, a glass of red wine remained mostly untouched, barely sipped. Images of Clara and Michael filled his thoughts. Clara, with her weary but determined eyes. Michael, with his weak but resilient smile. Alex knew their lives were far from easy. The injustice they faced weighed heavily on him. A soft knock on the door broke the silence as Anthony entered, carrying a file folder in his hands. "Sir, I've gathered more information about Michael's condition. Here are some details and contacts for major hospitals. If you'd like, I can reach out first thing in the morning." Alex nodded, taking the folder. He flipped through the pages, carefully reading every line. Congenital immune deficiency, a condition that rendered Michael unable to fight off even the simplest illnesses. Alex understood that without proper medical care, the boy would remain in constant danger. "Anthony, arrange a meeting with the best specialist we can find. I want to ensure Michael gets the best chance at treatment," Alex said, his voice steady and resolute. "Yes, sir. I'll handle it," Anthony replied, bowing slightly before quietly leaving the room. As the first rays of morning sunlight filtered through the windows, Alex was ready to act. He emerged from his bedroom, dark circles under his eyes from a sleepless night, but his determination shone brightly. Anthony had already prepared the car and necessary documents. "We'll stop by Clara's house first, then head to the hospital to meet the doctor," Alex instructed as he got into the car. Anthony nodded and drove through the bustling streets of Los Angeles. This journey carried a special significance. Alex didn't just want to help Clara and Michael, he wanted to restore the justice they so deserved. At Clara's house, she was busy preparing a simple breakfast for Michael, some bread, eggs, and juice from the groceries Alex had brought the day before. Michael sat at the table, his eyes lighting up as he watched his sister move around. "Clara, aren't you going to work today?" Michael asked, his voice soft but curious. Clara froze for a moment, looking at her brother. "No, I'm staying home with you today. I'll figure out another way to take care of us." Michael smiled faintly. "Don't worry, Clara. We'll be okay." His words brought tears to Clara's eyes, but before she could respond, a knock at the door interrupted her. She quickly went to answer it, and just like before, Alex stood there with his warm smile. "Good morning, Clara. May I come in?" Alex asked. "Of course, please come in," Clara replied, still taken aback by his visit. Alex stepped inside, glancing around the small home. He saw Michael at the table, his eyes brightening at the sight of Alex. Smiling, Alex greeted Michael before turning back to Clara. "Clara, I've been thinking a lot about your situation and Michael's condition. I'd like to discuss something with you," Alex began. Clara looked at him, hesitant. "What is it, sir?" "I've done some research on Michael's illness. I believe we need to take immediate action to improve his condition. I've contacted a specialist at a major hospital, and they've agreed to meet with us today," Alex explained, his tone earnest. Clara was stunned. She couldn't believe that someone who was practically a stranger would care so much about her and Michael's plight. "You've done all this, for us?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes, because I believe you and Michael deserve the help," Alex replied, his eyes filled with resolve. "I know you're strong, but sometimes we need support from others to overcome life's greatest challenges." Clara was silent for a moment, then nodded softly. "I don't know how to thank you. I never imagined anyone would do this for us." Alex smiled. "No thanks are necessary. Let's focus on helping Michael first." During the drive to the hospital, Clara sat next to Michael, gently holding his hand. Michael gazed out the window, his eyes glimmering as though he was seeing a new ray of hope. "Mr. Alex, am I really going to meet a doctor?" Michael asked, his voice tinged with excitement. "Yes, Michael. We're going to meet a very skilled doctor, and they'll help you get better," Alex replied, a reassuring smile on his face. Clara glanced at Alex through the rearview mirror, her eyes brimming with gratitude. For the first time in a long while, she felt a faint glimmer of light breaking through the darkness she and Michael had endured. The morning sunlight streamed through the hospital windows, casting a bright and peaceful glow across the waiting room. Clara sat beside Michael on a bench, gently stroking his hair. Despite his fatigue, Michael managed to maintain a faint smile, his eyes filled with anticipation. Alex approached, holding a cup of steaming coffee. "Clara, I just spoke with the doctor. They're ready to see us," he said, his tone calm but encouraging. "Mr. Alex, I don't even know how to thank you. Without you, I wouldn't know what to do for Michael," Clara said, her voice choked with emotion. Alex smiled and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Just focus on Michael. You've done so well until now, and now it's time for us to handle this together." The door to the examination room opened, and a doctor in a white lab coat stepped out. It was Dr. Morales, an experienced immunologist with years of expertise. He smiled warmly, extending his hand to Alex. "Mr. Alex, this must be Michael, the boy you told me about. He's quite charming," the doctor said, his kind eyes fixed on Michael. "Hello, doctor," Michael replied softly, his voice polite but faint. Dr. Morales led them into the examination room. He began a thorough checkup of Michael, asking Clara detailed questions about his symptoms and medical history. Clara answered carefully, occasionally glancing at Alex as if seeking reassurance. After completing the examination, Dr. Morales sat across from Clara and Alex. "Michael's health is fragile, but I believe we can improve his condition. I recommend starting a long-term treatment plan to strengthen his immune system. Of course, this process will be costly, but with Mr. Alex's support, I think we can manage it." Clara was momentarily speechless, lowering her head as she fought back tears. Alex leaned forward, his voice firm. "Doctor, I want Michael to have the best possible care. Do whatever it takes." "We'll do our best," Dr. Morales said with a nod. "I'll coordinate to start the treatment plan this week. Michael will need special care, but I'm confident we can improve his health." Clara clutched Michael's hand tightly, tears streaming down her face. Thank you so much, Doctor, and Mr. Alex. I never thought Michael would ever have this chance." Though young, Michael sensed his sister's emotions. "Clara, don't cry. I'm okay," he said softly, his voice full of hope. On the drive home, the car rolled through the bustling streets. Clara turned to Alex, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "Mr. Alex, I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You haven't just helped Michael, you've given me hope I thought I had lost." Alex smiled, meeting her gaze. "You don't need to repay me, Clara. I'm just glad to help. But I do have another idea I'd like to discuss with you." Clara looked at him in surprise. "What idea, sir?" "I remember Mary mentioning that you're an excellent cook and that you've always dreamed of becoming a professional chef. I have connections with several high-end restaurants in Los Angeles. I think we can help you pursue that dream," Alex said, his tone earnest. Clara froze, unable to believe what she was hearing. "But I don't know if I can do it. I've been so used to just surviving each day." "Don't doubt yourself. You've done extraordinary things to care for your brother. If you can do that, you can achieve your dreams too," Alex said warmly. That afternoon, Clara and Michael returned home, feeling lighter than they had in years. After dropping them off, Alex got back into the car and turned to Anthony. "Start reaching out to culinary training programs. I want her to have the best opportunities available." "Yes, sir. I'll take care of it," Anthony replied, accustomed to his employer's compassionate initiatives. Alex gazed out the car window, his eyes filled with determination. He knew that this journey was about more than just helping Clara and Michael, it was about transforming their lives forever. One morning, the Star restaurant, usually bustling with activity, was uncharacteristically quiet. Edward sat in his small office, flipping through invoices and reports with haste. Beads of sweat dotted his forehead, despite the air conditioning running at full blast. He noticed a significant drop in the restaurant's patronage over the past few weeks. "What's going on?" Edward muttered to himself, but there was no answer. The kitchen and front-of-house staff avoided him, keeping their interactions as brief as possible. Suddenly, Edward's phone buzzed with a notification. An email had arrived from the headquarters of the restaurant chain, his direct reporting authority. The content of the email made Edward's face go pale. The restaurant was facing severe backlash on social media. A post detailing Edward's unjust treatment of a young employee named Clara had gone viral, garnering thousands of angry comments. What post? Who spread this? Edward gritted his teeth, struggling to contain his anger. He opened the post and saw a short, secretly recorded video capturing him berating Clara in the kitchen. Is this how management treats employees at the Star? A young woman trying to help her sick brother is humiliated and fired in such a cruel manner, read the caption below the video, accompanied by countless outraged comments. His behavior is disgusting. I'll never dine at this restaurant again. This is shameful. Places like this don't deserve customer support. Edward read each comment, his hands trembling with rage. He grabbed his phone and called Mary, the staff member he suspected most. "Mary, do you know anything about this? Who recorded and posted that video?" Edward demanded, his voice sharp. "I don't know anything," Mary replied, her tone calm but layered with subtle defiance. "Maybe it was a customer or a staff member who couldn't stand the way you behave." "Mary, are you trying to undermine me?" Edward shouted, but Mary only chuckled dryly. "Undermine you? I don't need to do anything, Edward. Your actions speak for themselves," she said before hanging up, leaving Edward fuming. Within days, the pressure from social media and public outrage began taking a serious toll on the Star. Customers canceled reservations en masse, and negative reviews flooded food rating websites. The owners of the restaurant chain could no longer ignore the situation. An emergency meeting was called, and Edward was summoned to the headquarters. At the meeting, the restaurant's owner, Mr. Samuel, sat at the head of the table, his expression icy. In front of him were documents and videos related to Edward's actions. "Edward, do you know why I've called you here?" Samuel asked, his voice calm but cutting. "Sir, I understand the restaurant is facing some challenges with revenue, but I'm working on finding solutions," Edward began, but Samuel interrupted him. "The problem isn't revenue. The problem is our reputation. What have you done to make the entire community turn against us? This video has been shared thousands of times, and the criticism keeps growing. Is this what you call management?" Samuel pushed a laptop toward Edward, displaying the video of him berating Clara in full view. "Sir, this is just a misunderstanding. She violated the restaurant's rules," Edward stammered in defense. "Misunderstanding? I see very clearly what you did. A young employee struggling to survive, and you cruelly humiliated her in front of everyone. This is unacceptable." Samuel's voice rose, silencing Edward. After heated deliberation, Samuel made his final decision. "Edward, as of today, you are no longer the manager of the Star. I cannot allow you to further damage our reputation." Edward was stunned. He couldn't believe he was being fired after years of working at the restaurant. But Samuel left no room for argument. As Edward left the office, his face blank with disbelief, Mary had already heard the news. She watched him from a distance, saying nothing but feeling a sense of relief. The man who had ruled with arrogance and harshness had finally received his due. At the Star, the atmosphere became noticeably lighter after Edward's departure. Staff worked more comfortably, and Mary continued to share Clara's story with compassionate customers. The original viral post had not only drawn attention but also garnered widespread support for Clara and Michael. Edward, now jobless, found himself shunned by former colleagues and stripped of the respect he once commanded. He became isolated, facing reproach from friends and family alike. His life now was steeped in regret and loneliness, a far cry from his once powerful image as a manager. For Clara, however, the story took a different turn. News of Edward's firing and the changes at the Star reached her quickly. Though she had no desire for revenge or resentment, Clara felt a sense of relief knowing that the injustice she had endured had been acknowledged at last. That morning, soft sunlight streamed through the window of the small house where Clara and Michael lived. Clara was preparing a simple breakfast for her brother. This time, the table held more food than usual, a plate of sunny-side-up eggs, a few slices of toast, and some fresh fruit. These were the groceries Alex had brought during his most recent visit. Michael sat at the table, his eyes lighting up as he looked at the meal. "Clara, there's so much good food today." Clara smiled, gently patting her brother's head. "Yes, you need to eat plenty to get stronger, understand? We're about to start your treatment soon." Michael nodded, his eyes filled with hope. "I'll try my best, Clara. I want to get better so I can help you." Clara chuckled softly, but her heart was full of emotion. Their lives had changed so much since Alex came into the picture. With his help, not only did Michael have a chance to receive treatment, but Clara also felt like she was coming back to life, believing that dreams once thought impossible could become reality. At the hospital, Michael began his treatment under the supervision of Dr. Morales. Clara stayed by his side throughout the process, constantly encouraging him. Alex frequently stopped by as well, bringing snacks and offering kind words to the siblings. "Michael is doing very well," Dr. Morales said with a reassuring smile after Michael's first session. "If we keep this up, I'm confident his health will improve significantly." "Really, doctor?" Michael asked, his eyes lighting up with joy. "Absolutely," Dr. Morales replied. "But you need to eat well, rest plenty, and always stay positive." Michael nodded eagerly. "I'll do everything you say, doctor." Clara held Michael's hand, her eyes brimming with happiness. "Thank you, doctor. I truly don't know how to express my gratitude." Dr. Morales smiled. "Thank Alex. He's the one who made all of this possible so we could start treatment right away." Clara turned to Alex, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Mr. Alex, Michael and I owe you so much. Without you, we wouldn't have this chance." Alex shook his head, his voice gentle. "Don't think of it that way, Clara. I'm just doing what's necessary. The important thing is that Michael gets better and you can continue taking care of him." It wasn't just Michael who benefited from the change, Clara's life began to transform as well. With Alex's help, she was accepted into a culinary training program at a prestigious center in Los Angeles. It was an opportunity she had never dared to dream of. On her first day at the center, Clara felt out of place. The other students were experienced, and she worried she might not keep up. But Alex always encouraged her. "Believe in yourself, Clara. You have the talent and determination, those are all you need." Clara began learning how to prepare gourmet dishes, present food beautifully, and even manage a kitchen. Though challenging, she worked tirelessly, knowing this was her chance to create a better future for herself and Michael. Meanwhile, Clara and Michael's story continued to spread on social media. Many people learned of their inspiring journey and offered support. Some former customers of the Star even reached out to Alex to contribute to Michael's medical expenses. One evening, as Clara was preparing dinner, Michael looked up at her and asked, "Clara, I heard you're training to be a chef, right?" "That's right, Michael. I want to become a great chef so I can cook delicious meals for you and many others," Clara replied, smiling. Michael beamed. "I know you'll do it. You're the best person I know." Michael's words gave Clara the motivation to keep going. She knew that every effort she made mattered, not just for herself but for her brother. After a few months of treatment, Michael's health showed significant improvement. He was no longer constantly fatigued, and laughter had returned to their small home. Clara also began receiving job offers from restaurants, thanks to Alex's support and her outstanding achievements in the training program. One day, Alex invited Clara and Michael to dinner at an upscale restaurant. As they entered, Clara realized it was the very place she had once dreamed of working at. But this time, she wasn't a server, she was a special guest. Alex smiled at Clara. "Do you know why I brought you here?" Clara shook her head, surprised. "No, sir." Alex stood and turned to the restaurant's manager. "I've spoken with them, and they're very impressed with your cooking skills. Clara, if you're interested, this could be the place where you start your culinary career." Clara was speechless, unable to believe her ears. "Are you serious?" "Of course. They're looking for a talented and passionate chef like you. This is your chance to make your dream a reality," Alex said. Clara looked at Michael, who was smiling brightly, then back at Alex. "Thank you. I never thought this day would come. I promise I'll give it my all." That night, as Clara sat by Michael's bed, her heart was filled with happiness. Life had changed, it was no longer just a series of struggles and despair. Clara believed that with determination and the kindness of people like Alex, their future would always be as bright as the light shining that evening. The story of Clara and Michael offers a profound lesson in compassion, resilience, and the power of helping others. Despite difficult circumstances, Clara's unwavering love and sacrifice for her brother showed incredible strength. Alex's involvement demonstrated that kindness and empathy can transform lives. Ultimately, the story reminds us that no one should face challenges alone and that extending a helping hand can reignite hope in those who feel they've lost it.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.